So there we go. We'll start with Timothy again. We're talking now, this is part 3 of 4, designing challenging encounters. So what factors do you consider when designing encounters to challenge but not overwhelm your players?
This is one of the hardest parts I have, because this is part of your planning and your due diligence as a GM, which I'm horrible at. So it's because right now my characters in my fantasy game, look, there's a Balrog. Smear. There was a Balrog, and it's one of the hardest, most difficult challenges that you could be encountering, and they have the ability to one-shot it and obliterate it from reality horribly. So it's it's you got to be aware of what they have, and what is, to decide or figure out what will give them a challenge. Because they can kill a Balrog with one shot. Social encounters is where they're going to have some problems with. So that's where I'm able to, that's where I can give them some challenges. And
so how do you do it and not overwhelm them, though? I mean, it's easy to say, well, I just add in more creatures. But I mean, what are some considerations you put into play that says, you know what, this is going to be a challenge, and they may have to run on this one, but they still have the ability to run, barring like all 20s or something. I'm not going to TPK them round 1.
That's going to be, what's the objective? Why are they fighting? What are they fighting? Are they fighting one Balrog? Are they fighting an orc horde? What do they have to fight with? When it comes to the actual combat encounters, these are all different. What are their resources? How much magic can they cast? I've got a Diablo, so how much prep time do they have? If they can prep, it's going to be a really short fight. So being aware of your character, of what your players are, player characters are, being aware of what you have available, and sometimes it's a little try and learn. And you may have to throw in a couple of reinforcements, or you might just might have to make up a morale check. It's like, well, you took out half of them, then they run away. So if it's you've seen that they're getting pretty hurt, but they've succeeded in half, and you might say, okay, roll me a bluff check, make them see if they run away. Okay,
so that's leading a little bit more into what's going to be the next question here. So if we can, let's focus on like the factors you consider.
Yeah, their equipment, their resources, what they've done before.
All right. Rick, same question for you. What factors do you consider, especially in this more narrative style that you guys have, what factors do you consider when designing encounters to challenge but not overwhelm players?
So most of my what you may call encounters or random encounters, we call them pushes. So when we have our session 0, I'm listening to how they're creating their characters, what their background is in there, finding out what kind of enemies they've had in the past and that sort of thing. We're developing this. It's usually a totally new setting every time we kind of sit down with a new game. And I figure out, who the enemies are, who's going to be the main antagonists in this kind of situation. But I'm not concerned about balance. I'm more concerned about the how it proceeds through the game. If I'm making like mooks, peons, that sort of stuff, the general, wastrel kind of characters, they'll be done in one shot basically. If they give them a good punch, that sort of thing, they'll either cow to the whatever situation's happening, give up or run away, that sort of thing, or fall. And I also consider the damage that the player does, how high of a roll the player does, that also is a factor, especially in something like Traveler or, Cipher System. Same thing. Same things happen. So when I'm figuring these out, I'm looking at movie wise, the usual run of the mill be down in 1 or 2 shots. Some of the more, hefty henchmen, 3 or 4 shots, maybe more. Somebody who's the big boss may take about 8 shots before they bring down. But that's not to say if a player goes ahead and gives them if we're doing Traveler, he rolls box cars, maximum roll dice, all his add-ons, give them increasing damage and everything. I'll let the player roll their damage dice, and I will basically say that's, going to be at least, 2 or 3 hits there worth of damage in some cases. It all depends on what weapon it is and all that. So as far as I'm concerned about the keeping everything nice and balanced and everything, I kind of throw that to the side. So yeah, and so I guess that's all I can explain on that, unless you have anything that maybe I can clarify on something.
Well, you call them pushes. I think so. My guess is that the concept is to push the story, so to speak, forward.
Yeah, it'd be stuff like ninjas dropping from the ceilings, and they're start fighting with the players. If we're doing like the super spies kind of thing, that can be something that justifiably happens. Now the player has to figure out what he's standing in his bathroom and he's got dead ninjas everywhere. He just took them all out. Who are these guys? What were their purpose? He's got to figure this out, and we leave it all open for the players to interpret what's happening here and figuring out what's occurring as he's doing certain things. Maybe he was successful in beating these guys and some of them escape. Well, that's going to be a push for later. So I'm creating pushes as things are occurring in order to make everything make sense a little bit more. I don't just willy-nilly just pull something out of the sky and throw it at them. It's calculated by what they're doing in the game, who they're pissing off or making friends with. That could also be you also have good pushes come in too. So I devise my games as a game master to kind of flow along, the ebb and flow of how each character is interacting with NPCs in the world. Well, that's where most of my prep is NPCs, how they react, what their goals are, what are they doing, what's their plans.
So I'm going to give you a second follow-up here just because you kind of open up a little can of worms here that I'd love to hear your answer to this one. What do you, because I think a lot of people get like one-track mind about this. So what do you consider an encounter?
Encounter's a push for me. It could be anything. It could be a trap. It could be everything's an encounter basically.
Well, right.
Your room. You bring up. I'll bring up a bedroom. I'll give you the bed, the closet, the little side tables and everything, and a little creak occurs in that opening in the closet. Now the player decides what they're going to do in that situation. He describes, he may, of course, we have co-creation. He may open up drawers and find some hairbrush in there. I'll use that as a weapon, that sort of thing. It's entirely up to them to kind of add in kind of stuff like that. But to me, it's wherever they're at, whatever they're doing, there's going to be encounters in any kind of situation. I want to keep action going in the game, no matter where they are. We had a game where Shauner was playing an older fellow. He's away from the rest of the group. A couple of guys were on a space station. Another guy was on a ship. Nobody was starting together, and Shauner's character ended up interacting with a few characters along the way.
Was this the one with Sean Cherry and?
No. This is a more recent one that we had. Okay. It was a 4-hour Traveler session that we did. Okay. And I brought in chances for him to interact with what was happening. It was a group of these strangers came in, and they all started donning the same similar type of garb, and they were out to go ahead and cause an assassination attempt on somebody that's on the space station. So that was their goal. Shauner was seeing this happening. It was entirely up to him to interact or intercede, but he's an old guy. He followed his own, ways and everything. He didn't provide, any fisticuffs or anything until it became very, apparent on the station. But everything you bump into is a potential something could happen. So that's the way I design my scenarios.
I generally agree with that. I was asking because some people are gonna be like, they're always just thinking combat.
Yeah,
The damsel on the side of the road that you need to rescue or whatever is an encounter in and of itself, because that could go sideways if you decide she's just a woman on the side of the road. I'm gonna kick her in the face.
We're very open to having that being part of what that character's experiencing throughout the game, what the other characters do and what they're doing. We're not trying to tie all the players together by the hip or anything like that. So we allow the players to have their freedom in our games. So,
all right.
Yep.
Moving on to GM Fritz, what factors do you consider when designing encounters to challenge but not overwhelm players? Now, I know, like in the game that I was in, and the one that I watch on Sundays, that you're doing an adventure path right now. So those encounters are pretty much designed out for you. But I also know that you're tweaking some things, sir. So how do you do that? How do you challenge your players without overwhelming them? Because you've had a couple of close calls recently in your game.
Yeah, keeping them on their toes. Well, it all comes down to GM awareness. When you're sitting there playing with your players, awareness of what? Awareness of your party, the PCs, what they're capable of, what they're not capable of, their tendencies in encounters, be they combat or traps or something. So I just through experience in playing, I got a good gauge on what they're really capable of. So it really comes down to the challenge itself. What is its intent? Is it meant to drain resources? Is it meant to give away?
I was going to touch on that, dang it.
Is it meant to give away some hints or clues to the storyline or something? It all comes down to that. So as far as combat, I'm to speak specifically of combat and Pathfinder 2, it's got a very robust system for balancing. If you want to do balance, I don't care about balance myself. It doesn't play a role in my thing, but it's nice to see, how good did you do against this particular encounter? Just as a reference, it's kind of cool to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
But I really don't worry about balance because it's all about what's the purpose of the encounter. And is it going to get achieved through the player's actions? Is it being achieved? Is there something I need to do to facilitate that without disrupting the natural flow of the game and the story that the players are helping to tell?
Sorry, go ahead.
It's all about GM awareness and being spontaneous and creative and adapting to the situations that confronts the players. And I can read that pretty well, I think. Experience, I guess.
Do you ever use random tables?
Oh, I love random tables. The dice are there to tell stories, and I love that. I love prompts in my game, and random tables and stuff give me that. Unique little situations that I could craft in my head. Oh, a red dragon appears in a forest in some random encounter, just out of the blue. How is that going to work in the narrative and the challenge side of things? I love that. That's great. It's fun. It makes it fun for me as the GM. So I love random tables.
Well, if you roll a random table, get a red dragon, doesn't that mean everybody's starting at 50 feet from each other, like a Street Fighter arcade game, and it's like round one fight? Isn't that how it's supposed to be done every time?
Could be.
I mean, that's one of the things I think that sometimes people mess up on when they're like, well, random encounters, why would I have a ghost? A ghost would kill the party if I had it fight the ghost. Well, how about you put that ghost in a position that's haunting and moaning, and you don't quite see it, but you kind of know something's out there, and it's giving you the heebie-jeebies, and kind of, as Rick would say, gives you that push to like, what do we want to do at this point? Do we want to sleep in here? Do we want to move on? Or crap, now we see the ghost. Well, if they're smart, they probably won't fight it. They're going to turn tail and get out of there. But the encounter doesn't have to be. You start 50 feet from each other, whatever, swords drawn, like you're doing a duel at 10 paces. If you come across 300 orcs, it doesn't have to be Oh, I'm sorry. I stumbled into an area and there's just orcs here. No, you come across maybe a small scouting party, and then you hear the hoofs of the horde as it's coming close. The ground's shaking a little bit. How do you handle this? I'm taking a wide berth because there's 6 of us and 300 of them. That's what I'm doing. Or maybe somebody goes and scouts. My point is, there's so many ways of approaching this. Heck, maybe the orcs, if you're in a weird game, maybe the orcs will actually want to parlay with you. They're not after you. They're after some revenge against some other clan. So they've decided, you know what? You're only 5 people. Well, it'd be fun to kill you right now. Why risk the ire of some other humans, some other settlement when we're trying to go take out another clan? Go away, human. Whatever. The point is that, like, all of those are encounters. They don't have to just be chop people. See monster must chop. Although that is fun.
You could use these random encounters or random encounters to change up on players' expectations. For the Red Dragon example, okay, when I've got my players in Palladium Fantasy going through the forest and they encounter a Red Dragon, if they're a group that is historically used to 5th ed, they're going to want to attack it. And I could say, whoa, as the dragon, whoa, time out, what's up? And be completely, put their expectations completely sideways, because they're expecting a red dragon to be evil. But in my world, it's not necessarily evil.
Yeah, but the player characters should know that. If they're part of your world, unless the lore of the world has built up the red dragons to be evil, the characters themselves would know they're not necessarily evil.
If they have a skill if they have that ability to have that knowledge, I would give them that chance. But if they don't have that ability to have that knowledge, then it's a dragon is a dragon is a dragon.
All right. Let's see. I'm gonna we'll hit the comments at the end of the segment, so I'm gonna move on to the next question, and we'll go up. We'll just keep with you, Timothy. How do you adjust because you started kind of moving into this anyway? How do you adjust difficulty on the fly?
Either adding, you can have something come in for backup, or in the middles, say if you see it's going to get close, that they've at least defeated at least half, but they're down to like a quarter of their health, and say, okay, well, you've put the fear of God into them, they've run away, or you can bring in support for the players, so okay, well, some allies you've befriended are coming to help you in your time of need and give you a reprieve.
What would you say to people who'd say that's cheating?
The old army term, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. Heck, you could even have a god bestow, if there's a priest in the party, you have a god bestow a healing spell on the party to save their priest that they like. That's cheating. So what? The god, of course, is cheating. The god wants their priest to stay alive.
Very Deus Ex Machina there.
But in the setting of with gods, that's kind of should be somewhat expected a little bit.
I can play devil's advocate to it, but I'm not here to do that at this point. Because if that's obviously an option for people. I know in some of the couple of examples that I've told in the past about how I've adjusted things, I've had people come flat out tell me that I was an asshole and I was cheating. Well, you know what? The players had fun and they're glad I did what I did, but I wouldn't make use of that often, that's for sure. And we can get into that some other time. Because I actually am on the side that basically says, no, the dice determine what happens, and that's what happens. Now, to be fair, I didn't fudge dice rolls, and to be fair, I also didn't change the conditions of what happened in the fight. I just prolonged it. That's all I did, to give them some more fun. But so I'll just ask you that question: do you fudge rolls or do you fudge stat blocks?
Yeah.
Well, here's what I mean by fudging stat blocks. They're dying to this creature, and I wasn't planning on killing them. Let's have the creature maybe have a few less hit points, or vice versa. Man, I wanted this fight to be better than this, and they killed it right away. I'm going to double its hit points or so.
Yeah, I will. Especially, Palladium has this bad tendency of being grindy with their damage, and a low level demon can take quite a bit of damage. So they're grinding it and grinding it and grinding it. After 4 or 5 turns, it's like, come on, we're going to die anytime soon or what? So yeah, sometimes I will.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's bounce over to GM Fritz. GM Fritz, I'll ask you the same question. How do you adjust the difficulty on the fly?
Again, it's all about gauging the players and my intent for the encounter. I don't really mess around with stat blocks. I don't know if you've noticed, Max, but in Foundry, when we play Pathfinder, there is a nice little convenience for the GM. When he opens up an NPC sheet, say an orc or whatever, and this is in the rules of Pathfinder, you can do this, but it's facilitated in Foundry quite easily with a push of a button. I could make the orc an elite orc with a push of a button, or I could make him what's the term? He's lesser than the normal orc. He's a little weaker, just with a push of a button. That's how I could do it. And it's really simple. And there's mechanics to it in the Pathfinder rulebook on making an elite version on the fly or a lesser version on the fly. It's a real simple thing to do. But yeah, it's real easy for me. I just do that. If I need to add another orc, I'll do that or push a button and make him elite. I don't usually have to do that. Like I said, it comes down to my awareness and what my intention is for the encounter. Are they just wiping the floor with these orcs and the intention was to be a challenge? All right, we're going to boost it up a little. But for the most part, I avoid that. Whatever happens, happens.
So what about just the idea? Because this is about adjusting difficulty, and there are ways of adjusting difficulty. We've kind of leaned into the idea of changing stat blocks or fudging rolls or adding more, but how about just simply changing tactics? I mean, and if on one regard, the monsters are losing, I mean, they're not going to want to die. Maybe they start to barter, or they start to play guerrilla tactics that start to mess with the players or something. Do you do anything like that?
Well, getting back to this idea of balancing an encounter, I think the best way to balance an encounter, if that's the thing, is to let the players balance the encounter. Leave it to them to figure it out, whether it's using terrain a certain way or whatever. I shouldn't have to balance the encounter. If they want an advantage over the orcs because there's so many of them, maybe they should ambush them. And that's the way it's balanced, isn't it?
Okay.
So I leave it a lot to the players to figure out, or run away. If you can't deal with it, run away. Again, balance isn't the thing for me.
I mean, would you turn the tables on them and have some of those monsters use tactics within? Like, there's a book, we've talked about it here, the author's a douche nozzle, but the book itself is great. The monsters know what they are doing. And it kind of talks about, lions, how a lion knows to pick out the weakest prey, how goblins they know how to survive because they don't just fight these 10 pace duels with somebody that they know they're going to lose to. They use trickery and nonsense and they mess with you and so forth, and like all these animals have either through God's given powers or through evolution, they know how to survive in their environment, so they shouldn't just be or necessarily just pushovers.
If it makes sense.
Right. Well, I mean, yeah, what's it called? A piercer, after it falls from the ceiling of the cave, isn't going to all of a sudden pull a ninja swords and act weird. But maybe it's like, I don't know if it's smart enough. I can't remember the piercer stats, but maybe it's smart enough or just realizes through the course of existence, like, I see 19 shadows down there. Don't fall, because if I miss, I'm not going to munch. We'll just let this group go by. Where if it's one straggler, you know what?
Yeah.
You've been in this cave 3 times and nothing's ever attacked you, but because you decided to rest in here all by yourself, oops, something fell from the ceiling and decided to poke you. I guess my point in saying all this is there are tactics. Do you believe that there are tactics like you can have the monsters utilize those tactics against the players where it seems like an easy fight, but not so much?
If it makes sense, yeah. I use tactics for the monsters all the time.
Okay.
Makes it funner and more interesting for the players.
Sure.
Yeah, there's other ways to balance it if the GM wants to do that. But, like before the encounter, make sure there's like you're looking at the encounter. Here's the monsters. Here's what your players are capable of. But look at the setting. Look at the situation. Is there high ground? Is there brush? Is there a pit trap somewhere that's hidden that could kind of play a huge role in the encounter?
Sure.
And these are
It
things that
looks
are under your
simple, and then they're all
control,
like, ah!
yeah, charge right down the chute to the depths of hell. Yeah.
Okay. Traps are a great equalizer. That's a good point.
Oh
Yeah.
man, I love traps. Don't use them enough.
Players might disagree, but all right, Rick. Same thing for you. Again, in a more narrative style game, how do you adjust difficulty on the fly? And to be fair, I probably should have asked this question a little bit better. It's not just about changing stat blocks. It's about we want the encounter to have a feel, maybe, and it's not attaining that. It's too easy. It's too hard. It's too slow. It's too fast.
Most of my pushes, I do have like a list written down, which also includes what happens, what their motivation is to take out this character. Are they going to question him? They want to take him alive. Are these slavers? Do they want to just enslave people? They're going to be taken as a captive. Want to right out kill them? Well, then it better be a good darn death. It better be something really good. I usually try not to push those kinds of encounters where it's brutal death, or nothing kind of idea in the beginning. That's going to be later on when the characters, the players, are perceived as a genuine threat, to the main antagonist or protagonist, depending on what's the situation going on in the world. So I do have kind of lined up, an idea of my NPCs, what their motives are and everything. So when it comes to combat, I know what they're there for the combat for, to capture, to do this, whatever. And I follow that. I don't adjust any hit points or, to hit rolls. Most I play mostly Traveler, and I play mostly the Cypher system. So those have definitely smaller pools of hit points in those kind of respective games. So it's not as grindy as a lot of other games. So I do kind of push myself away from the more grindy kind of games
where where everybody's got like 100 hit points, but you're only doing a D6 per attack. It's like, oh my god.
It can be retarded. And
yes.
I want to have, if I'm going to have like a D&D style game, with the Lord of the Rings kind of feel, I'm gauging basically on the movies, how many hits does a Uruk-hai take before he goes down? How many hits does a goblin take before he goes down? How many hits does a troll take before he goes down? And I take those all in consideration, and I divvy out the hit points. Usually it's about 5 per hit is where I'm kind of gauging. So every 5 hit points, right? Because usually if you're rolling a damage die, it's usually a D6 or something very similar to that, right? So I kind of say 5 is the mean kind of damage point that I pull off. I kind of shorthand my hit points on my monsters to make it a lot more easier for me to tick things off. Okay. So that's just my way. I know the other players that I play with, they all game master slightly differently, and we all have our differences. So but yeah, I don't adjust anything. I just know the motives of the attackers if they're attacking, and it usually doesn't mean that the characters are going to be dead at the end of this. If they get overwhelmed, they're going to be captured, they're going to be enslaved, and it's up to the player to.
You just took one of my notes from me. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay.
But, that's good, because that was kind of going to be one of my points. Is not every fight has to be to the death. There are fights of honor. There are fights of misunderstanding. There are social fights. There's so many different.
Yeah, you got lots of room with no negotiation. I mean, a red dragon in the middle of nowhere. I mean, perhaps he's looking for a meal. He spots the characters and says, "You intriguing young ones, I want you to do a deed for me. I will let you buy. And the characters can decide on how they're going to proceed from here on. I don't know how they're going to proceed, if they're going to go and attack. Usually they won't, because knowledge kind of says a big red dragon, you're going to die, right? So but it also depends on the level of their characters, or how strong their character is. They may perceive it as
do you risk
equal.
it?
Do I risk it? It's something that they have to weigh, and perhaps there is a bit of a parlay that they do a little bit of a battle at first, and just to gauge, and maybe they'll continue their negotiation. Who knows? I just follow what the players are doing. So
do you, because of the more narrative style, there's this sometimes, especially thanks to Twitter, there's this idea that the story is more important than anything else. So I'm just going to ask one: do you fudge dice rolls?
Nope.
Okay, that's
not at all.
All right.
No, everything's out in the open. It's out there for them to see. Yeah, I don't fudge. And in the case of something like Cypher, whenever they roll a 1, I have to introduce something new. So I have a bag of tricks over here. They're the Cypher cards. I use them even in Traveler. Okay. I love them because they have such great ideas on them. I'll pull one out, and some of them are geared to a combat situation. Some are geared to more of a social interaction. There's different ones. So I'll pull one out and get a good idea maybe of something that comes in. There might be something else that shows up, and it might be detrimental to both parties. And now both parties have to decide on who's your enemy here. Maybe you have a common ground to fight on against this new intruder, and maybe that results in something really cool that happens between the two first initial enemies. It's all up in the air. I just enjoy having as much surprise in the session. Myself as a game master, as the characters do, the characters in the game. So that I enjoy. So I try to set things up so it's very open.
Sounds good. I'm going to gather some chat here. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns for each other, let me star some of these things. We'll get to those in a moment. Or if you don't, I'll just move right into them. So first of all, I want to thank Law Dog for gifting 5 memberships. Let's see who got him this time. Darth Theac got him. He's usually a member. Let's see, El De Luna got it. Damien X247. Krantz02. He might be lurking. I don't know. And Charles. Just Charles. That's all. Is it King Charles? I don't know. Might be. They all got a monthly subscription, or a month subscription. So thank you very much, Law Dog, for that. Really appreciate that. I had a couple comments. I also got a couple comments behind the scenes of people saying that they're really loving this new format. They're liking, the discussions that are going on and so forth. Just to remind folks, my viewership has been cut in half by doing this, though. So I appreciate that people are liking this, but and not everybody apparently. So
sometimes it's the quality, not the quantity.
There's some people who still just want the rants, though.
Yeah.
So, all right, next on here again, thank you, Law Dog. If a Balrog shows up, let the Balrog kill the NPCs first, or slay a horde of goblins trying desperately to scurry away before noticing the party. Give your players a window to make a plan. A great idea. It also does one other thing that a lot of times some game masters might not think about. It shows the intent and or the power of the creature they're about to be in combat with. They can get it. It might not be everything, but it's a hint. If you don't know that, say, a basilisk can shoot lightning from its eyeballs, maybe that will be its first attack. Does that give away every secret? No. Or what if it's a wandering plant, like a a man-eating Venus flytrap that has, sticky stems. So anybody who all of a sudden one of those goblins runs up, attacks, and gets stuck to it, now stay away from it. You can give the players some hints to some degree as to what the creature's capable of. I'm not saying spoil everything, but I love that kind of concept. Absolutely. Okay, moving on to the next one. No, I'm going to give you guys a chance to say something if you want, but don't want to wait too much time here. So, and Nerdy Ogre says, encounters anything that engages the PC, which is followed by Law Dog, who said encounters any situation or change in the environment that demands a player either take an action or not take an action. Again, thank you very much for both the memberships and the $5 super chat, Law Dog. Appreciate that. And I generally agree with both of those. I mean, I'm not pedantic about the term. To me, an encounter is really any situation that causes the characters to like make a decision or do something. I mean, it can be really anything. It's my opinion anyway.
I noticed that there was a discussion, a year or two ago, about the 3 pillars: combat, exploration, and social. And those are, I think, it's something that a lot of GMs need to contemplate on a little bit more. Socials and environmental encounters, so to speak.
I think Freely, again, going back to Freely, I think does such a great job on all those aspects. It's got the combat, it's got the social, it's got the exploration. I'm like, I love the way Freely, puts the games together. It has its own flaws, don't get me wrong. There's a death spiral some people don't like, and there is a mid-game where the characters become really powerful, but a good game master can deal with that by having more mental encounters, having more creatures. Sometimes that's just what you have to do. You have to throw in more things to fight them. Sure, they can easily take down the big bad, but what if that big bad has a couple of lieutenants? I think Rick was talking about this. Get the big bad with 8 hit points, get the lieutenants with like 5 hit points, and the mooks with 1 hit points.
Yeah, the big bad should have lieutenants.
All right, that is it for segment 3. We are on, once again, 15 minutes over time, and we haven't even started for segment 4, so we're going to jump into that pretty quickly here, but I want to thank everybody. Please like, subscribe, and share if you like these conversations that we're having. I'm loving this new format. I'm loving having these conversations, and I hope you guys too. The next segment is going to be on innovations in game mechanics. I'm going to jinx myself by saying this, but I think it is going to be a shorter segment anyway, because I had to combine a couple of questions, but we'll see. We'll find out. Now it's going to be an hour long. It's just the way it's going to be. But innovations, game mechanics come next, and I hope to see you then.